Welcome to Go Get Great, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs and ambitious small business owners. I'm your host, Brittany, owner of Brittany Miller Socials and mother of 3. Go Get Great is all about helping you make life and business work together. You'll learn about the fumbles that helped get me and my guests to where we are today so you don't have to make them. So come join the journey with Go Get Great. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Go Get Great podcast. Today I'm excited to introduce Toni Eastwood as a guest. Toni and I have a fabulous conversation about women and business and what that looks like in the corporate nonprofit kind of world, and also what that looks like for female entrepreneurs. And we talk about all things setbacks and challenges and kind of how we can overcome those and just kind of embrace what it is that we're doing, whether we are in the corporate world or in the entrepreneurial world, to kind of make things better. And I would love to introduce Toni to you and share why she is such a fabulous person for this conversation, because she is a published author, transformational expert, mastery coach, and creator of the Aspire model. She spent over 30 years researching and practicing the secrets to success, from ancient wisdoms to modern science, which we talk about in today's episode as well. Toni brings practical, proven techniques that have helped thousands of small business owners and entrepreneurs to unleash the power within, transforming their business and lives with passion and purpose. She was formerly the director of talent for a FTSE 30 company, and she's now running 2 successful small businesses herself with multi-million pounds in sales and contracts. And she knows what it's like to navigate both her business and her team through the inevitable ups and downs of entrepreneurial life. So without further ado, welcome, Toni. All right, here we go. Well, good morning and welcome to the Go Get Great podcast, Toni. I would love it if you just go ahead and get started by introducing yourself, and then we'll dive into our topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good evening from me here in the UK. So you can see it's dark in the background.
Yeah.
I didn't get up that early for you. Yeah, so I'm Toni Eastwood, and I run my own business. I've been running my own business for 13 years, and I specialise in helping women to start and grow their own businesses. So that's kind of me.
I love it. So how did you get started in business? Have you been doing the same thing for 13 years?
Yeah, more or less. It is a bit of a story to it, but so I spent most of my career kind of hiding my light under a bushel, feeling very insecure, not very confident, and I spent a lot of time thinking that the pinnacle of anyone's career was to get into a corporate job, to be a director. And so I spent a lot of years getting to there. And in 2010, I walked into a head office role, director of a FTSE 100 company in the UK. Okay. And I kind of thought, yes, I've made it. And then I realized when I got there, it really wasn't for me. We weren't aligned in any way. And I lasted 18 months there. I uprooted my partner. We moved from the south of England to the north of England. I know that's very far in American terms, but it's not far for me. Yeah. And I just hated it. And I ended up leaving on what they call a compromise agreement here, which means you're on an NDA. You can't talk about it.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very difficult situation. But what it did do for me was gave me a big kick up the backside to get on and start my business. I was 44 at the time. So I just thought, no, this is the time to start my own business. I'd actually wanted to do it for a long time, and I'd been working with small businesses for probably 20 odd years before that. I spent most of my career working with small businesses, and particularly with women business owners.
Okay.
So I thought, you know what, that's what I actually love doing. As I was weeping into a Starbucks when I kicked out of my job, basically. And then I started my own business doing exact kind of what I do now, but yeah, and really I thought at the time it was the worst day of my life, but it was probably the best day, really, because it, like I say, it gave me a kick up the backside to get off and do, stop hiding, stop worrying about everything, and just go and do something, create the life that I want to
Hmm.
have and I want to lead on my terms without having to work with idiots that I don't want to work with anymore.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, so kind of that was 13 years ago this year. And there isn't a day goes by now that I don't thank that situation. But at the time, it felt really, really, really tough. And,
Hmm.
sometimes even now I tell that story when I'm running my programs. And sometimes even now I cry because it was such a painful time. But,
Hmm.
like I say, mostly it's quite, I'm quite thankful for it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We have a similar story, although I didn't spend nearly as much time in corporate as you did, but I went to school for business, like that was what I graduated with. And I always thought that, I would climb the corporate ladder, I'd wear a dress and heels to work every day, and like that was what my life was going to look like until, I was ready to retire. And then I had kids and my listeners know my story, but I was going to be coming back from maternity leave and I didn't have childcare. And I was like, I need to work from home. I need some flexibility. And the company just basically told me no, that it was
Mhm.
come back to the office full time or I don't have a job anymore. So I can
Yeah,
very much sympathize. There were a lot of tears that day.
yeah,
I didn't have a compromise agreement. I had to hand in my resignation. I was like, why do I have to quit when you're the one that's not working with me? But it is what it is. But yeah, I can sympathize with that situation. And 2 years and a little bit later, and business is still new and somewhat rocky, but I'm always grateful that I have kind of moved away from that. And it's unfortunate that sometimes we have to come to that breaking point in our careers to realize that we
yeah,
needed a change, but
yeah.
sometimes we just, yeah, need the kick up the backside, like you said. So,
Yeah. And it's such a common story for women, like I hear it
hmm.
every time I run a program. Someone's on one of my programs with that experience, still raw from it, or, it's very new for them. And it's just outrageous, coming up to International Women's Day.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we are still having this issue. I mean, I started, earlier in my career working with small businesses, and I actually came to America and did some research about what you were doing over there to support women starting small businesses and
Hmm.
Black and Asian minority ethnic women starting their businesses,
Hmm.
and particularly looked at social entrepreneurship in America. And I bought my research back to the UK, and then I worked with the UK government to help write their women's enterprise strategy.
Oh, that's
So,
cool.
I've spent since about 1999 researching the barriers and issues that women have rising up the ranks in corporates and
Hmm.
starting growing their own businesses. And frankly, not a lot's changed. The
Hmm.
numbers are getting better, but really, really slowly.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just such a shame because, if employers were more flexible, they'd have great employees. I mean, big mistake to let someone like you go, Brittany, but good on you, because now you're in charge, master of your own destiny now.
Hmm. Yeah. It's crazy to hear that, you say you've been working on this for so long and really things have not changed all that much because what we hear everywhere is like, I don't want to call it propaganda, but it almost feels like it about how, equal things are and how great the world
Yeah,
is. And I was like, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to live in current times, but like I
yeah,
definitely acknowledge that there's still a long way to go because I've had that personal experience,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is unfortunate. Now, I am curious whether it got a little bit easier for you as you kind of transitioned into some of those leadership positions when you were still in the corporate world, or is it kind of just even across the board between your experience being a woman in business in corporate?
I think, well, I spent most of my time actually working in I would say like non-government organisations, where we were helping with sort of government funding to support people generally to start and grow their own businesses. So I didn't really experience the corporate world until I would say early 2000s, when I went to work for a consultancy that specialized in supporting women in business. And I then spent most of my time working with most of the major brands in the UK and worldwide brands. So every sector you can imagine: technology, telecoms, retail, construction, logistics, everything, all the top brands in the UK. And we were running leadership programs for women for those companies, a lot of them banks, and you know, global names. And we weren't really allowed to talk about what we were doing with their companies because they were so worried about litigation. They were so worried that, you know, they wanted to sweep the issue under the carpet about the fact that women just weren't getting on in equal numbers in their organizations. So they were doing something about it. But it wasn't until 2008, when we had the crash, that they then started to come out and all be quite happy to say what they've been doing. So, you know, my experience is that there always has been, you know, issues and barriers that women have to fight to get through, or overachieve to get through, to get on in those top positions. And even now they're on, you know, there's not equal numbers of women. What I see now in early careers, where I'm working with women in their sort of younger in their careers, they don't see that yet. So they're not seeing it kind of in the middle of the organization.
Okay.
They are still seeing more women above them, but sadly, that, you know, when they come to making the decision like you did about, you know, having children, having a family, however that is for them, or even, you know, a lot of women having to go and look after their parents and things like that, is then that's when they start facing the issues. That's when they then start to trade, you know, their time or flexibility for lower salaries, more flexibility, but then they get lower salaries, but then they work just as many hours but on a lower salary. And I just see it everywhere. And I'm also seeing, and a lot of my clients are coming to me from very senior positions, you know, like I say, global brands, who are saying, you know, I just need to get out because, you know, the organization wants their pound of flesh, because they get, you know, 6-figure salaries, you know, so they're expected to just be there, drop of a hat. And what one lady was telling me yesterday, that she'd just given birth, she was still in hospital, and a boss rang her up and said, you need to fly somewhere like China the next day. And she said, get lost. And he was like, no, if you want your job, you're going to China. So she said, you know, get lost. But she had to have a non-disclosure agreement as well. And it's just disgusting, really. But yeah, so I still think it's happening. And I still see that, you know, there's a lot of senior women that are just not, you know, kind of not putting the hand out to help other women get up the ranks. So I don't know. They reckon that it's going to take another 120 years or something till we get proper parity at this rate. So
wow, that is
don't
a
think it's going to happen in
terrifying
our
number.
lifetime. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
scary.
that is unfortunate. So when these women come to you and you're like, okay, this is our situation, since it seems to be so common, what advice do you usually give them?
So what I do is I don't really give advice in that way. I just try to help them to really think about what is it they want to create. So what sort of life do you want to create? You know, to recognize the skills that they've got, to recognize, you know, the experience and expertise, and help them to either find a new space where those are valued, or invariably they want to leave their organization. And they want to set up something, and usually it's setting up something that's helping, you know, others to go through what it is that they've been through. So there's a lot of community interest companies and social enterprise. I think you call it B Corp. there's lots of women who, kind of want to take their, what they've learned in their career into more coaching and mentoring and helping other women that have had similar journeys to them.
Hmm.
So I help them to really create what it is. I call it their big hairy ass goal. So I
Hmm.
talk about really big goal. What is it you really want to create in your life? If you're having your best, absolute wonderful life, wonderful days, what would they be shaped like? What
Hmm.
would you be doing? What are the type of people you'd be working with, the type of clients you'd want? Help them to sort of envision that, and then we help them to put together a plan for that and start to implement lots of tools and techniques. So over the years, I've done a lot of research. I published my research back in 2004,
Hmm.
especially when I came back from America. I used a lot of that from there.
Hmm.
And we have written a model called the Aspire model, and I use that to help women and men to sort of restructure their lives and give them the tools and the how to, because there's a lot of help and advice out there that is about, you should go and do these things, you should create a
Hmm.
big audacious goal, you should, and then don't tell you how. So my
Hmm.
model and my support is all about the how. Right, here's some tools, go away, implement them, go away, do this, come back, we'll talk about it. So all of the time they're shaping their own journey, and the kind of model meets them where they're at.
Hmm.
And basically I'm coaching, and I do stretch and challenge, because I think women are more risk averse, and we often, struggle with confidence and sort of putting ourselves out there. So I do stretch and challenge, and hopefully get people to, you know, a more advanced place than they would be without me, and doing more, a lot more with their business than they might have done without me, because they've all, there's so much talent.
Hmm.
um and it's getting them to just realize how much talent they've got, and to trust themselves that they can make this happen. So I'm facilitating and stretching and challenging, I'd say, rather than advising,
Hmm.
because I think everyone really knows in their heart of hearts what they really want to do.
Hmm.
And it's coaxing that out of them. That is what I do more than
Hmm.
anything.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's like, it's almost like as women, we're afraid to say things out loud for fear of judgment,
Mhm.
or like actually fear of success too is a big one. I
Yes.
didn't really realize that was a thing, I guess, until I started my own business. And then I would look back at my goals and I was like, what was I so afraid of? Like I was playing small for probably the first year and a half in my business.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. And then I
Yeah.
heard about this thing called, fear of success. I was like, oh, well, that explains a lot.
Yeah. I think what we do is like, because I do think we are kind of a bit of a strange animal when we go into um, enterprise.
Mm,
It's not for everybody, absolutely isn't, and it probably is only 20% of the population that ever do it. And we worry, particularly women, about, well, how's that going to change family life, and we worry about the effect that we'll have on other people and how they're going to take our success.
mhm,
There's still a lot of women out there whose husbands don't like the fact that they're successful. I get that as well, all the way through. Probably every program I run, there's someone on it who's struggling in a relationship, where they've not got the freedom to be who they want to be and to do what they want to do. Sometimes that's about money, like, so they've got a job, it's bringing in what they need as the family, and then to
mhm,
give that up, that's a big ask. um so, and if your family's not entrepreneurial and not been running businesses, then they don't understand what you're doing, and it's very
mhm.
isolating. It can be
Yep.
scary and isolating.
Oh, for sure. I definitely have experienced that. It's like still
Mm.
to this day, my mom doesn't understand what I do. And part of it is just what I do. Like she doesn't understand
Yeah,
social media, so she has no
yeah,
concept of what people give me money for. But like in the very
yeah,
beginning, she's like, what do you mean you're starting your own business? Like, how are you
yeah,
going to pay for things for your kids? How are you going to support your
yeah,
family? It's like I'm still some days sure she wonders those things. She's just
yeah,
stopped saying them out loud now, but it is
yeah,
very challenging to be the first one in your family or your friend group to be like, you know what? No,
yeah.
I don't want
Yeah,
what everyone else wants. And, you have to be okay with that and have the courage to say that out loud, which
yeah,
is a huge milestone just to overcome that initial kind of telling people.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So for the people that are kind of thinking maybe I do need to step out and do something different, you're kind of recommending starting with, well, what it is that you're good at, what you like doing, what it is that you want. And then for those people that are kind of in it already a little bit, I feel like the next kind of thing is that a setback will happen. And then they're like,
Yeah.
what do I do? So, what advice do you have for business owners, specifically women that have come up with a challenge or a setback and they're kind of staring at the wall, not sure how to get over it?
Yeah, and I have been there though. So when I said I thought that day that I was kind of kicked out of, unceremoniously kicked out of corporate, I thought that was going to be the worst day of my life, and it wasn't. So the four worst days happened, and I do think that when we think about setting up in business or achieving our goals, ultimately we want freedom and we want happiness, and we think that that's what we're going to get every day, and like that's not real. So first of all is to like realize that actually it's just normal for you know things to go pear-shaped. Nothing ever goes the way that you think it might do, and
Hmm.
it's so for me it's about coming back to what it is that you really want. So it's kind of trying to take the emotion out of it, which is really hard because I got to 2018. So I thought I started in 2012, got to 2018, and I thought, yes, I've got past that magic 5 years.
Mm.
Everything's going to be okay. I was almost literally just about to turn over £1 million. And then I
Wow.
had a situation happen that meant I had to close down my business and start again. And it was so scary and so freaky. And I thought, oh my God. But what I did was, I thought, well, there's no point in weeping again. That's not going to get me anywhere. And so
Hmm.
basically take the emotion out and go, right, okay, what is it I really want? What is the good in this? So there's always a silver lining. So what good can come out of this? What
Hmm.
lessons can I learn? And what would I do differently going forwards?
Hmm.
Which is what I did. I went back to my own model, which was say, right, okay, what do I want? What do I want to create? And there were things that weren't brilliant in my business. So in a way, I thought, okay, this is my chance to switch them around and actually do what I really want to do.
Mm.
And because as you're growing your business, you can, if you're not careful, take on business and projects that
Hmm.
actually don't really align with what you want because you're focused on the money.
Hmm.
And that taught me a lot. Was actually I was focused on the money, that sort of ego. Oh, I've got £1 million turnover business. And actually what it was, I had a lot of staff. I felt like in the end I was just washing money in. I was going out working
Mm.
really hard getting the money in, and then I'm paying everyone. I felt really responsible for their mortgages and all of those things. I thought, actually, I don't want that anymore. And I want it to be about me. I want to create a life where I had flexibility. I wrote myself a new vision, which was by 2021, June the 21st, so Midsummer's Day, that I would be living half in Spain and half in the UK, chasing the sun, basically, having
Mm.
a really flexible life, running my business online, which was before COVID, so no one was thinking really about pure online in those days, but I really foresaw that was a way to go. And I also had to remind myself that I'd done it before, so I
Mm.
could do it again.
Hmm.
Um, so there was that, and also I now had the experience of doing it before.
Hmm.
So I just started again. And then it wasn't June the 21st, 2021. It was actually the 1st of August. So I missed my goal by a few weeks. I was sitting in my brand new property in Spain.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. And so just following my model, trusting in the process, trusting in me, trusting in, shaking up my team a bit. So some of them left. in a nice way though, I did it. I sort of said, look, this is where I'm going now. This has happened. What it was, we have this thing in England called Ofsted, and it's really archaic. And they failed my contract. It was ridiculous. I appealed, but basically they then shut my business down because of it.
Hmm.
And I had to start again. And many people experience this in the UK. I mean, they do it in schools and education and training where you've got government contracts. And actually, a teacher, sadly, not long ago, killed themselves because of it. So it's
Wow.
a really hideous situation that they put us through. Anyway, again, thought it was the worst day of my life. And again, I thank them because it really did make me rethink. And sometimes it's a bit like you said earlier, it's a shame we have to wait till our back's against the wall to
Hmm.
start to go, actually, this isn't working for me. It's not what I want. I was getting stressed out. I was feeling such a lot of pressure having so many people work for me, thinking, because sometimes it's feast and famine, you get a big payment one month and then there's nothing for 2 or 3 months and you're like, oh, I've got to make salary and all of that. And I just thought, I don't want that anymore. I don't want that ego thing around the money. It's
Hmm.
about what sort of lifestyle do I want to create?
Hmm.
And for a lot of women, it's not about driven by money and fast cars and stuff like that. It's about, how do I want to live? What sort of things do I want to do with my family? What sort of holidays do we want to have?
Hmm.
Where do I want to live? Those sort of things. So yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's focusing on what do you want. It's just bringing it back. What do you want? Okay, what do you need to do about that then? If
Hmm.
that's what you want, what needs to
Hmm.
change? What do you need to stop doing? What do you need to start doing? Um, and it's quite it's a bit of a wake up call, but we all have that answer in us.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that. And I so appreciate that you shared your story in that, because I think that there's a lot people can kind of learn and have comfort in too, in the same respect. I'm in a
Yeah,
bit of a transition period too in my business. And I mean, it didn't come quite to the back against the wall this time,
yeah,
but last year, when I was doing my reflection stuff, I noticed that there was a lot of disconnect between what it was that I wanted and why I started my business and
yeah,
how it was actually going. Like, I was working
yeah,
ridiculous hours. It was like all evenings and weekends and a lot of time during the day too. And like, I understand when you first start a business, that's going to happen a little
yeah,
bit to kind of get it off the ground. But, 2 years in, and I was still feeling that. And I had clients and I was doing projects that I just wasn't super excited about. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like, we need to make some adjustments now, in terms of like my client load, and like price points to support that. Because, yeah, I was chasing the money. I was like, okay, I need to prove
yeah,
that I can do this to my family, to myself. We've got to pay the bills. And then somewhere along the line, I was like, okay, well, that's great, but I'm not happy. And my happiness is important for my family too. So we're
mhm.
making some adjustments and transitioning things. I was like, we're going to be welcoming a new child. Like, I literally cannot have an 80-hour work week. That's
No,
just not going to happen with a new baby. So, like, what does my new business model need to look like to be able to support the reality of what we're facing? And, doing that, I'm okay with the transition period. Things are, yeah, maybe a little bit rocky financially right now, but I know that that can be scary for people, whether you're
mm,
in corporate or business, because, or like entrepreneurship, because no matter what kind of adjustments you're making, there's still adjustments, and there's that
yeah.
fear and that change period that's really uncomfortable, and not everyone is okay with uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the important thing is to keep bringing it, is to notice when you're going into fear and lack and that sort of thinking, because that's what you create and find more of,
Mm.
what we think about develops and grows. So we
Hmm.
have to be careful about our thinking patterns. And, it's human to spot the fearfulness and, the worry. But when we get there, it's to turn it round to say, okay, where is it I'm going, and focus on the positive and focus on what it is that you're creating, what you want to create, and spend your time thinking about that, because that's when
Hmm.
you spot the opportunities, that's when you spot the right type of clients. And we like to call it soulmate clients. We
Oh.
really, really, so it's the ideal client avatar, but it's like,
Mhm.
what is your soulmate client? Who would you absolutely love to be working with?
Mhm.
And really focus on getting to them. What's the one thing that they need right now? Or
Mhm.
how is it that your service can support the thing that they need right now? And
Mhm.
really go after that. Because I think so many, especially when we start in the business or we get to a point where we're like, actually, I'm not sure about this, or if we're really entrepreneurial, we spot the next shiny thing, we can start chasing loads of different rabbits and
Mhm.
you end up catching none of them. So we always say like one thing to one person for now, just while you focus and get yourself straight, get the business where you want it to be. Then you can start adding new products and services. Then you can start, maybe going down a different niche or something. But
Mhm.
if you really focus on creating something for your absolute soulmate clients, then that is what you end up attracting. That's who you talk to in your social media. I don't need
Mhm.
to say this to you, Brittany. This is your bag. Because if we're trying to talk to loads of different people, we're going to land no messages with
Mhm.
anybody.
Mhm.
Um, and it's so easy to get freaked out and come off the path that you really want to be on. And I like to see that sometimes when obstacles get in your way, I've got like a little mantra, it's called OMS, obstacles make me stronger.
Oh.
And to use them as reverse indicators. So it's not because something's going wrong or you're on the wrong path. It's actually, no, I'm just being tested and I am on the right path and I'm
Mhm.
going to keep breaking through. Because sometimes we can stop ourselves because we think it's too hard, and we come off just at the point where we get to the event horizon where it's all going to start happening.
Mhm.
We don't let ourselves just tip out outside that like comfort zone, and it's just on the other side of our comfort zone where the success lies, where the growth opportunities lies, where we spot, where we thought there was blank corridors, windows and doors start to open.
Mhm.
um, but we've just got to stay focused and like keep hold of that goal, but know that it takes inch by inch little steps to get you there.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, as a business owner, my human design type, I don't know if you know anything about that, is
Yes, just been exploring that with one of our clients.
yeah, exciting. Okay. It's nice when I say these things out loud and the other person
Yeah, I
understands.
love
Usually I
it.
get blank stares, but I am a Manny Gen, so a manifesting generator. So like I do
Yes.
all of the things. So you're talking about staying focused on one thing, and I was like, that for
Yeah.
me is my biggest
Hard.
struggle because I see everything. And like when I launched my business, I offered social media and email marketing right from the beginning. And those are two very different things. And, looking back now, I can see that it has been a struggle because I tried to grow them both kind of at the same pace. And it was
Yeah.
too challenging because I was basically looking to attract two different client audiences. So I kind of had to put the brakes on one to build one more solidly and then focus on the other. So now
Yeah.
this year I'm really working on getting things in place in my business to kind of have a solid client journey so that it makes sense for businesses to have the social media and the email marketing work together. But it's a lot of, that focus that makes it all come
Yeah.
together. Otherwise, I would be running two businesses for the rest of my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And with 4 children, it's going to be hard to start with. Yeah. And you need to be able to give you some time, family time, children time, partner time, and then the business.
Hmm.
And we can have it all, but not all at once.
Hmm. Yes,
Um,
and not all by ourselves either. That's the
yes,
other thing.
absolutely. Yeah. And you've got to make sure, especially with about to have a newborn and with a newborn, you've got to make sure that your body can build its energy back, and you're giving energy to a baby, looking after the family. You've got to look after yourself, because
Hmm.
you won't be able to look after anyone if you can't look after yourself. And it's so easy, like you say, to put in hour after hour after hour. um, and we need to sort of sharpen the saw, because we think if we keep going, we keep going, we'll get loads done. But actually, that our impact or the effort is just not as good. The impact of what we're doing is not as good. So we'd
Hmm.
be better off to just, I always down tools at 8 o'clock at latest at night
Yeah.
now. And I won't watch TV. I don't do anything. I might do a bit of yoga,
Mhm.
and just really trying to look after myself. And I journal and all sorts of things like that, just to like empty my head, because sleep is my number one priority, because I know
Mm.
that if I don't have a good sleep, then no one's getting a good day out of me.
Yep. It's true. And I've kind of gone through that awareness phase of, all right, well, I worked 80 hours last week, but I
Yeah,
really only accomplished like 30 or 40 hours worth of
yeah,
work because although I was still working for those other bazillion hours, my focus wasn't there. So projects would take two
yeah,
and three times as long. So you really do have to get good at being like, okay, nope, this is like my cutoff. This is it. I
yeah,
need the other time to like rest and recharge. But it can feel very challenging to do that when you're in that feast and famine mode.
yeah. It feels really counterintuitive. And
Yeah.
you know well, I go back to, so like my research, I research sort of ancient wisdom, modern science, religions, gurus, everything,
Mm-hmm.
to look at what was it that successful people did to be
Mm-hmm.
successful. And
Mm-hmm.
most of that was driven from my own demons, because I never felt good enough. I never felt confident. I had a really rubbish time. For my first 15 years at school, I was bullied and I had a horrible time. So I was always hiding. I was never like wanting to be myself or putting myself out there, because I knew I'd get beaten up on the way home from school or
Mm-hmm.
something. So I really sort of hid myself, and I found it really, really hard when I was in my early career to kind of, I couldn't even use my voice. If my manager would talk to me about what I wanted, I would start crying. My voice would wobble, and I didn't want to cry in front of him, so I didn't speak. It was really awful. But I kind of went on this quest of collecting qualifications. I did a master's, I did everything. I did
Mm-hmm.
coaching, I did NLP, anything you can think of, I did it, because I was trying to collect the confidence, which you start to realize actually doesn't come from those things. It comes
Yeah.
from in um but I forgot where I was going with that. I'm really sorry, I lost track.
It's
I
okay.
I found that yeah, the research I did was really to try and pick that up. And all successful people, it doesn't matter whether they were artists, musicians, and going back to Einstein, some of the famous people in America, like Rockefeller, Henry Ford, all of those great people, all kind of did the 4.5 hour workday.
Mm-hmm.
They actually did really deep focused work on what was really, really important,
Mm-hmm.
and then they kind of took time out. Yeah, so Sir Isaac Newton used to rent his neighbour's field to go for a walk in the afternoons, because he worked 4.5 hours in the morning, and then he just literally stopped and went off. And it lets your brain like regenerate, rethink. It's so powerful if we can, oscillate with being really deep focused work, then off, whether it's go out for a walk, do a bit of exercise, have a bit of family time, and then deep on again. So like oscillating our day is like gets back in touch with our circadian rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really powerful, time blocking and seeing just how much you can get done when you really focus, just for 90 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so true. So like personally speaking for me, my kids used to be home with me, but just within the last couple months, my two oldest are now in like school and daycare, so it's just
Yeah,
the one. And like the amount of growth I have seen in my business in the last 3 months is off the charts because I now have, 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon where my son is napping and I get that deep focus work time.
yeah,
And I'm like so protective of it now. He'll like wake
yeah,
up early and I'll be
absolutely.
like, you need to wait in your bed for 10 minutes because I need to
Yeah.
finish this project. But it really does make a huge difference when you can sit down and focus. And I think that that's probably something that hinders a lot of women in business because usually when we're doing this, we're in situations like mine where we have children around or we're at home and we have all of these distractions. So do you have any tips and recommendations about how we can really prioritize some of that deep focus time and kind of tune everything else out?
Yeah, so I think we all have like our constraints of reality, and so to not get let that like really get to us. It's like,
Mm.
okay, well, where can I find that time? So I find that I call it AM and PM bookends. There
Mm.
are two times of the day where really most of us have the most control over what we can and can't do. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, and probably as a mum, you know, the early mornings is really great time. So I will get up really early and I'll spend the
Mm.
first hour on me, and I do exercise, meditation, whatever it is I fancy doing is me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will do an hour and a half's deep work, you know, before I even get in the shower. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I get a massive chunk of work done. I then go and get in the shower, and then I get into the office, you know, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then I'll do another piece of deep work for an hour and a half.
Mm.
So by sort of 11 o'clock, maybe 12 o'clock, I've done 3 hours of really, really good work.
Mm-hmm.
And I find if I can do that, even if it's 3 days a week, I find that my weeks are so much better and my days are so much better. Now that you can't necessarily do that every single day.
Mm.
I certainly try, but it's about finding when is that space for you where you could do that deep piece of work? When is that
Mm.
space for you where you could have a bit of time for yourself? And usually it's not right in the, you know, in the day, once, you know, once the day is happening and the family's about or work's
Mm-hmm.
happening, there's not a lot of control that you necessarily have.
Mm-hmm.
um, so I definitely try and block that out. And then in the afternoons as well, I try and leave my afternoons for my work with clients and
Mm.
like meeting new clients, or maybe doing the delivery that I do for my program, so that my best time is actually the mornings where I'm most creative. You know, I'm not tired. That's
Mm-hmm.
not to say that I don't prioritize my clients, but I don't need to be like my absolute best self
Mm-hmm.
to run my program. I know my program inside out. I know what I do. It's
Mm-hmm.
when I'm, you know, creating social media or writing a bid or a proposal for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it gets when it needs my best mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I actually just talked about this in a podcast episode of mine is I like to kind of do my deep thinking and my strategy work for my business, the needle moving activities first thing in the morning when I'm most cognitive because I
Mm,
am more creative, but also I find
yeah,
that my ability to make decisions, like I trust myself more in the morning because I haven't been inundated with the chaos of the day. So I find that that's really made a big difference. So it's
yeah,
nice to hear that it works for other people too.
definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah, powerful stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I have so many more questions for you, but we've covered so much already. But on those, I guess one of the things that I'd be curious about what you do, but on those days where, you know, things don't go as planned or you're just not on the same track that you thought you'd be on, what do you do to kind of pump yourself back up after a bad day and help you refocus the needle?
Yeah, so a couple of things kind of in the moment is to get up and just move.
Mm.
You know, it's so easy. We're so sedentary. It's so easy to just sit at our laptops all day long. So I will get up and move, maybe go out and get a bit of fresh air, and come back. And I use an acronym. It's called WIN, and it's actually written in front of me on my notice board in front of my desk, and it
Hmm.
stands for what's important now.
Mm.
Because we can get so kind of het up in responding to other people, being very reactive, and actually feeling like we're not getting stuff done. And so we actually say in the office, my colleagues and I, we quite often go, right, what's important now? Because
Mm.
like, you know, it just then brings you back and say, okay, this is the most important thing to me to do, so I'm going to get that done. Or if it or and listening to your body, if you're really feeling tired or you haven't had a good night's sleep, you know, like, I mean, you're pregnant, you don't always get a break. I'm menopausal, don't always get a good night's sleep.
Mm.
So like you can't always guarantee that you're going to be fresh as a daisy all day long.
Mhm.
So I will actually go, do you know what, I'm going to pack up for the day and I'm going to go home, have a bath, and then maybe I'll pick up in the evening just for an hour or so
Hmm.
if I feel a bit fresher, or I just go, no, do you know what? I'm going to get an early night, and then I'm going to pick it back up in my deep work session in the morning.
Mm.
Um, and then I always use my journaling at night to really help with that as well, because to ensure that I get a good night's sleep, it's about letting go of any emotions, clearing out that clutter that might be in your head from a day
Hmm.
like that. So again, I use another couple of acronyms, WWW, what went well. So
Hmm.
just actually going, do you know what? Let's focus on some good stuff. What actually went well, even if it was a really, really silly little thing, just,
Hmm.
capture that, pat yourself on the back. What WNW, which is what needs work. So again, rather than saying, oh, that didn't go well, or I'm really rubbish at this, or this didn't happen, it's like, okay, what needs work? And
Mm.
sometimes for night after night after night, I'm saying, right, what needs work is I need to do deep work. I need to finish that proposal. I need to actually get on my social media. It could be the same thing that I'm writing every night, but it
Hmm.
actually is just clearing it out of my head. And then I do use win, what's important next. So the next morning, I know exactly what I need to do.
Hmm.
And it clears your head out. And then I do practice a gratitude in my
Hmm.
journal. So I write 10 things I'm grateful for. And that is scientifically proven to make us 25% happier. So I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm going to write 10 things a day.
All right. I like that.
So I do find, yeah,
I was gonna say I
sorry.
usually only do three. Maybe I have to up my game a little.
But it's 5 things. If you write 5 things you're grateful for once a week, you're 25% happier.
Mm,
So
okay.
3 a day is still good. I try and do 10, um, and I just try and just let myself wind down,
Mm.
uh, because I think when you get into kind of a state like that,
Mm.
it is almost your body and your brain saying, hang on a minute, slow down. I need to catch up with you. I need to refocus, like I said, sharpen the saw and kind of get back on it. And just by taking a bit of time out, even if it's just 10 minutes to go outside and just look at the sky, or look at nature, get grounded, put your bare feet on the ground.
Mm.
It's a bit woo-woo, but it does actually the earth vibrates, and we feel it, and we
Mhm.
can lose contact with it, especially when we're on blue screens all day. It really does just take a breath.
Mhm. I like that. Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question because I'm really curious. Since you have done so much research and you've looked into so many things, do you still actively do like personal, professional development reading? And like, if so, what are you reading right now, or what have you read recently that
Mhm.
really resonated?
Okay, so absolutely. I was just literally before we came on writing a post, because it's World Book Day today, isn't it?
Mm. Hmm.
So yeah, I am always reading, mostly non-fiction. I'm a bit of a nerd around, gurus, successful people. What do they do? What do they get up to? So I've recently read Elon Musk's biography,
Oh, okay.
and I am absolutely fascinated by that man. I think he's amazing. I think he's disrupting so much, and so many people don't seem to take him seriously, or
Mm.
seem to have hatred for him, which I cannot understand. He's doing so much good. Um, his methods, like he's got this thing which I use all the time now. If something's wrong in the business, he puts his sleeping bag there, and that's not, I use that as an analogy, but he actually does it. He puts his sleeping bag on the line, the manufacturing line where it's not working, and he will sleep there with the team until they fix it.
Hmm.
And I think that is such a great, like, I just think it's amazing, like, so he gets his hands dirty, he rolls up his sleeves, and he's like, let's figure this out. And so a couple of times now in my business, I thought, okay, this bit's not working. I'm going to put my sleeping bag there. But, I haven't actually slept under the desk, but apparently he does, And so I just find that, and he takes everything back to sort of first principles, like strip everything back, how do we make this simpler? If if it takes too long for a robot to do it, why the hell are we having a robot do it? Let's not be silly. Let's strip out the parts. And he talks about he's on the line where they were making the Model 3 and there wasn't things working, or it's a bit too heavy. I can't remember exactly what, but he was literally pulling things off this vehicle, going, why is this on here? If you can't tell me why this is on there, why is it on there? Rip it off, and he said, and if you don't have to put some things back, you haven't ripped enough off of it, and I just love that as a kind of a way of really thinking about your business. Is like, if you haven't stripped it back and really focused and to the point where you have to maybe put some things back in, then you haven't stripped it back enough, and you're not maybe being as lean as you could be. So yeah, I found that fascinating, the stories of his whole story about setting up PayPal and journey through SpaceX, and talking about a big, hairy, audacious goal. Making life interplanetary. You could not get more bigger, hairy ass than that, could you really?
No, you cannot.
And that's what fascinates me about all those books, is all these people have a big, mega goal that they're striving for. That's what gets them out of bed in the morning. That's what keeps them going when maybe the proverbial hits the fan. That's the thing that they go back to when things aren't going right. No, this is why we're doing this. Right, come on team, let's get back on it. Or come on Toni, let's get back on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't read his biography, so I might have to pick it up. You were talking about it, and it actually reminds me of the book that I just finished reading. It was called Subtract by Letty Klotz, I think. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation on that, but talking about how we live in a society that just always adds more and more, and people don't stop and think about, well, maybe the solution is actually taking things away. So that was a really kind of eye-opening read too. I like that one.
Yeah. I read I do at least an hour a day of still continuous professional development. I love it. I absolutely believe if you're coaching people, you need a coach. I'm in coaching programs, I'm in mastermind programs, and again, I believe we're the sum of the 5 people that we hang about with. And if we're not hanging about with people who are on the same journey as us, or at least a little bit ahead, then actually, how are we going to learn? How are we going to get where we want to go to? So I absolutely believe in, you need to invest in yourself, and to be able to keep sane and to be able to keep going with your business.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, we had an absolutely fabulous conversation today, Toni. Thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap up, I would love it if you can share how people can find you and connect with you if they want to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you, Brittany, for having me on. I listen to your podcast. It's one of my go-tos when I'm not sleeping through my menopausal madness. You're on my podcast, so like I hear you and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be on there soon. Yeah. So where you can find me is on LinkedIn at Toni Eastwood, OBE. Facebook the same, Instagram the same. Yeah, be lovely to connect. Direct message me. Happy to connect with anyone and share any tips and tools I can.
Wonderful. Well, I will link all of her social media stuff in the show notes for you. And just once again, thank you, Toni, for being here. And thank you guys for listening. And we will see you next week on the Go Get Great podcast.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Go Get Great. I hope you found some useful tips and tricks that can help you make life and business work together. If what I said resonates with you, please share it on social media, and don't forget to tag at Brittany Miller's socials so that I can celebrate you for taking those first steps towards achieving greatness. Remember, success doesn't happen overnight. It takes dedication, hard work, and a lot of spirit. So don't be afraid to dream big and go after what you want. Keep striving for greatness. You get closer with every step forward, no matter how small they may seem. Until next time, go get great.